This poem is called The Unwanted Crown. It comes from a quote by, actually a poem of Charles Simics. He says in the poem is called Psalm, and the line is, "To the mad ones crowns if they still want them." So this is the unwanted crown. My eyelashes fluttered like spermatozoids under lakes of strip mall ooze. Cigarettes bled from the side of my face, and the cycads in my head whispered of evolution and frogs. I was modal and alone. When the clock turned on me, I hibernated in the winter of a nuclear corner. Tin cans grew from my hips like holsters, and life coarsened around me. I muttered at the slave ships that drug their cochineal cargo past my knees. I saw two lovers unbuckling the wind. Their skins turned into paint and alabaster, and a garden of toasters was born between their legs. I watched a beautiful woman suffer beneath the cold touch of a philanderer. Her body floated above the city in swirls of carbine mist and hot coal. I took dictation for the angel that sang to her in a voice filled with salt water and empty hands. When her shadow cried, I burned a feather on the air. For years I stood beneath the clicking time clock of the hydra-headed Persian mafia. I wrote for pool balls and poker chips, lonely men covered in tap algae and cologne who spoke only CNN. I lowered myself into their museum of absolutes. I memorized the great white apes who munched on pita bread and sound bites. When they raised their flag, I gathered all my sleeping boarders and flew. Across Italy, I followed her trail of yellow dust and pink condoms, copulating hammocks that nested and quivered when the wind bit. I wandered through the abandoned thunderstorms where ovulating maps still crawled across the tile. Maids undressed in beds of fingerprints and combed their black wings for flights to Vegas. I passed through the carpeted mausoleums of casinos, the scent of neem oil wafted from terracotta tans, and a dial tone slept in a Gideon Bible. The desert sun dried up like a uterus in the sky and spat out the ticking mind of an iguana. I dressed myself in a suit of moonlight and migrated to the banks of the Chicago River. I knelt on the bridge between April and May, tracing a deflated basketball that floated on its cold green water. I screamed into a payphone harvest with a feel for burning. Buses dropped eggs from tailpipes, and the sky fed me from its holocaust of dreams. At night I hid in blockhouses, whistling at the stars like cattle. They hung their blankets of sand in my eyes. Deodorized artists drifted in packs through a calcite fog, and conspiracies floated on open sewer mouths. I met a man whose power was a wolf he'd captured and taught to speak to the universities between sighs. I collected the hoof prints of deer and mailed them to offices inside the sun. I wrote poems for the hallucinating prairies and the heads of laundromats. I drug a trail of ash everywhere I went. Bartenders passed over me with their eyes, and cats pressed themselves against the snow in my shadow. I crossed the electric fields between 7-Elevens, whispering to no one. And I'm going to read one more, maybe one more, but just for sure this. How much time am I at?
If you're, one more is plenty fine, you're good.
Okay. This is a good one to finish on.
Last call.
Let's go.
I have some like that. Oh. This is called The Autopsy of Garcia Lorca. They found the bullet first, just beneath the skin. It was covered with sand. The inspector smiled and asked for the knife. The slit caused a sparrow outside to dive toward the water at an alarming speed. If you weren't watching, you would have missed the tooth he stuck in his pocket, or the way his watch began to sweat. The guard was close by, and a rash spread on his wrists. When he lifted the lung, the fin of a dolphin was unexpected, especially the single drop of ocean water still clinging, blue as the kiss of salt. The clock began to cut seconds in half. The guard pronounced him dead again, as if to reiterate what everyone knew. The stomach was filled with the hope of meat, and the intestine twisted like a savage vine. But the heart was beating in the inspector's hands like a wet bird, and when it rose from the chest, the guard's belt buckle turned to dust, and the inspector felt his fingernails grow 1/4 of an inch. The heart became the bird he was only thinking of. It beat against the walls like sound. The wings were the color of tanks at dawn coming over the hill, and the guard remembered the first time he'd heard thunder as a little boy. Thank you very much, everybody.